Well, hello, everyone. We are here for the post show where we kind of break down everything that we just heard and witnessed and experienced during the message. And so now we're going to go around, introduce ourselves, and share a highlight of today's service overall. So my name is Perry. I'm one of the pastors here at Connections. And that last song was a bit of a highlight for me. It just was a cool story. Within the song, it was all about God's story in our lives. I like that. But you can go next.
All right. Hi, I am Andy. Let's see, highlight. You know what? It was fun seeing Crystal and Lexi singing together today.
Yep.
So
Mother-daughter.
Yeah. And they sounded awesome as always. So yeah, that's what I will go with. Other than the pre-show, which is always the best part of your morning.
Right.
I'm Kathy.
Get your microphone.
Oh.
Sorry. I'll be that guy, Steve. You'll hear from Steve.
I'm Kathy DeMott, and I also loved watching Lexi. And
It was very nice.
Yes, they sing together. I took pictures for them. But anyway.
Such a cool thing.
But I think, too, just the reminder that as we follow God's commands and as we do his word, then he blesses and prospers us. I think the whole just sowing and reaping principle is so strong in that message. And I found it to be true in my life and other people's lives that I see around.
Nice.
Yeah.
And last but not least.
I am Layla, and I think my highlight is just being here because it's been a few weeks, especially this past month.
Yeah. You
where
guys have
we've
been busy.
Yep, really busy. Missed a lot of church, and then I got convicted today when Pastor Dave. I heard it in the first message.
I was going to warn you. I'm like, you might get triggered.
The travel, if you have kids that are in sports and, your misplaced priorities. And I was in the bathroom and I was like, just hit me with the lightning bolt, God. Like, let's do it. I was like, what a zinger.
What a zinger.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Well, that leads us to the first question, which is just what stood out in today's message. Kathy and Layla, you guys mentioned a couple things, but was there anything else that just stood out to you guys?
I mean, that one was definitely a zinger. But no, I really liked today's message. I think it, in general, was just motivating. There was a lot of internal reflection where I just really want to make sure that how I show up every day is a true reflection of God, and my faith. And I think that those are probably my biggest takeaways.
Yeah, I really loved just kind of the general kind of big idea of our lives can make God look awesome.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of this encouragement of all right, you go be awesome now so that God looks awesome. And I don't know. I'm a rah-rah kind of guy.
Oh, me too.
I like it. Gives me a little bit of fire under my butt, I guess.
Yeah.
But, yeah. How about you guys?
I'll tag on to what Kathy said about, living and God working through you. Last night, we were there at the Schoolcraft fireworks. And as I walked up, Carson, one of our kids from youth group, who I don't get to see as often, but as I was just walking up, I hear somebody just yell, "Andy!" And I was like, what? And I was like, oh, well, Carson, hey, what's up? And it's one of those things where I'm like, when you don't see him every week, sometimes you're like, do I even make an impact? And then something like that happens. You're like, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be, and God's working through me, because it's nothing that I do that really makes it stand out. It's God working through me. So it's just affirmation of you're that's what you're supposed to be doing right now is spiking these kids in the head with balls and stuff and just making it fun, and that stands out. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Kathy, did you want to expand any more or mention anything else?
Off of what you said too, I love that he said that your life is sometimes the only Bible people will read.
Yes.
And that really, it's like, are they reading the law? Are they reading the grace? Are they hearing salvation from me? And it really convicted me of I have a lot of friends who would have not made Jesus their Lord. And it's I'm trying to sew it in there, but I know I need to be more bold with some of them. At some point and it's what's the fear? What will I lose? Do I risk their friendship? that Penn and Teller was that,
Yes.
how much
Yeah.
do you love someone or how much do you really hate someone, not to witness to somebody
Right,
and really give
right.
them a chance for salvation. And I thought that was, in Dave's first message really, really hit my heart too,
Yeah.
that we really, to truly love, we have to be bold.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's great.
I never think about that we're the only Bible some people may
Yeah,
see.
that was a
And
great
it's one of those
line.
things I need to think about that more because I'm like, I always try to put my best self forward, but some days you have bad days. And
Yeah. Mhm.
even those days, it'd be great to think back. Remember, you're the Bible today. I'm like, oh no.
I know.
Yeah. For some reason, God chose to use us as his reflection. And,
Yep.
ugh, we're not always the best at it.
No.
Sometimes it's muddy.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's focus on something a bit more positive, though. Like, tell us a story of someone whose life makes God look awesome. Who's a positive example? Dave mentioned a couple different stories, but who's someone that you know?
You asked us before, pulling the curtain back a little bit, so we weren't sitting there going, oh. But I will shout out a good friend, Mickey Seeley. Because it's one of those things that anytime something great happens with him at work or whatever, anything he posts or talks about, it's not something I did. It's something that, God did through him or stuff like that. And he never takes as much credit as I probably would take because it's one of those things. It'd be really easy. But he works hard. He does take some credit because he's definitely owed it. But he definitely, in all that he does, tries to make God look awesome. He talks about it openly. He runs an actual company that usually you don't hear that type of stuff said.
Sure.
And the people that work there really, they start to come to various church things or this or that, and there just seem to be a special place in that kind of cutthroat car dealership thing. So
Right.
to me, that's somebody that definitely stands out as
Yeah.
somebody who's making God look awesome.
Oh, cool. Ladies, do you have a story you'd like to share?
I mean, I think I've said it before, but probably the most influential people in my life have been my sister and her husband, and they are the most solid Christians. And my brother-in-law is a physician, so he made good money, and he was always someone that, like, when my husband left me, they bought me a house so I could rent for dirt cheap until I could get on my feet. But they also help other people go to college or get a down payment for a home, not just relatives. I mean, just people, and they're constantly giving to different, Christian groups and ministries, and teaching the Bible out of their home and mentoring kids, taking kids in and fostering
amazing.
them. I mean, they just continue. Even now, he's retired and he's still just studying and doing teachings and online. And I mean, just constantly his heart for God and my sister's heart, and just for people that life is yesterday. She's like, well, I didn't really want to go to this party, but I just thought it's an invitation from God it might be a divine appointment. I need to show up and just be Christ in the situation.
Yeah.
And it's such a good reminder. Their hearts are always so full of I want to be the open Bible for people, and
Right.
so they can see Jesus through us. So
Amazing.
it's very
that.
inspirational.
It's always good when you have someone close to you
Yeah.
that can be that example as well. Yeah. Layla, you got one?
I don't have a specific person that comes to mind, but I've just been thinking a lot about different people that I've seen on social media platforms, not afraid to represent their faith.
Yeah.
Even in reality TV shows, we're big sucker for The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and it makes me think about some of the men and women that have been bold to represent their faith, and especially in shows like that where there's a lot of inappropriate things, but they choose not to partake in that, right? And you have millions of people perhaps giving you backlash for that.
Right.
That's just incredibly bold and strong and inspiring. But there's a gal that my husband and I and my daughter Charlie, the reason why we miss church a lot right now because she's in travel softball, but there's this catcher Reagan that we all follow on Instagram, and she also shares her faith, and we just bought Charlie some new catcher's gear because we realized that she has outgrown hers. Fun fact, this is the most expensive sport in the world. But anyways, I was like, oh, you need new stickers for her helmet because she has the fun stickers I love umpires. But it reminded me that there was some of the some things that you can buy from this gal, the catcher that we really like, and we bought her a sticker that says "Thou shall not pass," or "Thou shall not steal." I think is what it is. From one of the verses from
Right.
Exodus.
Yeah.
So it's just things like that, right?
Sure.
These people that are like social media is so prominent, and the people that decide to represent their faith in all the different platforms. I think that is really important, especially in today's generation, because we're so focused around our devices and social media in general. So
And there's probably so many people telling them, don't do that because you'll lose so many followers or this or that. So.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. So for me, a guy that stood out to me was someone that I learned about decades ago now. His name is Muli. And he grew up in Africa in a very, very poor family. I think perhaps he was even an orphan himself. And somehow was able to get an education and kind of scrap his way through life to build a really thriving business there. And he became one of the richest men in his country. I can't even remember which country it was, to be honest. But he could have been like any other person who's had that kind of rags to riches story and just kind of kept it to himself and just, enjoyed the success and the blessings of his hard work and what God's given him. But along the way, he became a man of faith as well. And he, I believe because he was an orphan, looked around himself and he said, man, there's all these other kids that were like me. And he just started basically taking street kids into his home and started this process of building a huge orphanage that grew and grew and grew, and it developed into way more than just an orphanage, very similar to the place that we support there in Uganda. And this man, he went from kind of this guy that could have just kind of rode off into the sunset to he spent much of his wealth on establishing these orphanages and things like that where he wasn't getting paid anything. And really most of his funds and finances became this ministry. And he made such a cool impact. And back in college, I attended a church that supported him, and it was just such an amazing story. So that was a gentleman that I thought of where it's like, man, he really made a huge impact and from a world's perspective, didn't have to at all.
Yep.
So pretty cool.
Yeah, totally.
Another, a little bit more serious question for us personally now. What is something that has or is holding you back from showing God's greatness in your life? And perhaps, especially if it was a has sort of thing, what could or has helped you overcome that?
I think for me, I think a lot about how I show up at work or for work, because I don't really go far because I work at home. But I think like showing your faith, especially at your career, unless you work for your wonderful church, there's boundary lines there, right? And I work in HR on top of it. So it's something that I have always tried to be very mindful of. And I've questioned too, like if I've ever made anybody like feel uncomfortable, or it's, just something that I try not to think too much about because I want it to be natural and I don't want to not be who I am. But I've had definitely moments or scenarios where I didn't maybe really feel out my audience that well, and I have made people uncomfortable. And you just, for me, I just kind of evaluate the situation, figure out what I could do differently. But it's like it's never fully balanced, but I try to just lead with who I am, right? Like I don't want to not be who I am to not make somebody else uncomfortable, right?
Sure.
So I definitely can think of situations too outside of work, but it's one where it makes it a little bit more gray because it's almost like politics, right?
Yeah.
It's in the same bucket where you just have to be very careful with those things.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be tough.
Yeah.
We've talked about that several times here around this table where it's like, man, it is such a difficult balance that work in faith. And on one hand, Jesus calls us to be bold, but on the other hand, there's these corporate expectations
Right.
and rules. And it's like, how do I do this in a way that's not going to totally risk my profession and my livelihood versus, all right, but Jesus wants me to be bold. It's tough. I totally get it. Yeah.
It is, yeah. I would say for me personally, one of the things that was holding me back was just, coming off as disingenuous or stuff, even though I know I wasn't, because much like you said, I am who I am. It's kind of hard for me to not be that. And I'm blessed that God has made me be confident in who you are. But, just you don't want to say the wrong thing, or you might hold back because you don't want to come off as too strong or too forceful or too trying to shove something down somebody's throat, because I don't like that approach to me. So I guarantee there's been times where maybe I've held back too much, and I've just been like, you know what? I'll just let this go for now. And I could have done something even minor or things like that. So now I just kind of like you said, when like my work, thankfully, even though my work is a public company, people aren't afraid to express their beliefs and things like that. But so I just show up, I be me, I try to be as positive as I can. And when people ask me, why are you so positive, even when things are bad? I'm like, well, here's why. And it gives me a nice little opening that I can talk about, that even though things are bad, Jesus still has my back. And then I can leave it at that. And it's something, and I'm not telling somebody how they should live, how they should feel. I'm just telling them what I am. And then if that opens up more dialogue or more questions, then I can go deeper with them. But I think that's the big thing for me, was like not wanting to come off as a certain way and then holding back too much and not sharing anything at all.
Yeah, I can relate with that a lot. That would probably be very similar to me. There are times where I'll be doing different things in day-to-day life and people won't necessarily know that I'm a pastor, and other times where they will. And regardless of their knowledge of it, I'm not always as intentional as I would like to be. Where it's like, oh man, I just spent a whole season with that guy, and
could have said something, right?
I could have invited him to church, or I could have, talked to him a little bit about his faith at some point. Like he and I were coaching together that whole time, and like we never really went any deeper than, hey, what are we going to do for the basketball game? Like,
what defense is going to work today?
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely feel like a distraction for me is just the day-to-day grind sometimes of just like, oh, well, I've got a task, and so I'm going to complete the task. And I'm not always as intentional as I should be. Yeah. What do you think, Kathy?
Yeah, I think I deal somewhat with imposter syndrome. Like I like to teach, I like to run small groups, and then we had a lot of going on, so we kind of stepped back from a lot of that. And then I feel like God's like, okay, you need to step up your game. You need to, finish some projects you've started, but then it's like, oh, well, why should you? Or you're not good enough. Or, you have those conversations, and it's like just the enemy in your ear. And it's okay, I don't need to listen to that. But then it's like getting back into the routine and the rhythm of, taking time to either write or just, finish up things that you've started. And, it's just the enemy that distracts me sometimes, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. I know there's a lot of people that have things God's put on their heart, and we just often get distracted or put aside or talk ourselves out of it. Or like, well, it won't be as good as I want it to be, so why bother? Or what will people think? And
he's really good at that, isn't he?
Yes, and it's so foolish because God has showed up and done. I've been able to do certain things, but then I still talk myself out of it at times. So.
Let that self-doubt creep in.
Yes, and I feel like God has really been pressing on me the last few months because I've had taken time off of certain things, and I've just felt convicted. And in today's message, I'm like, okay, Lord, all right, I'm gonna get out my laptop and start finishing a few things I was working on. Just because I know He's put things in my heart, and I feel like if I don't finish, I'm not being obedient, and I won't. And it's not about me; it's just about like being the message or the story that He has to tell.
Right.
So He gets the glory. So I feel like I'm not alone in that. I know there's tons of people out there that have things that God has put on our hearts, and we've just put it on the back burner. And if you're one of those, just jump in, because I'm working on jumping into in the next few months here. It's like I've got some new goals to start, being more disciplined back into some of my rhythms. So. Yeah,
that procrastination or distraction, but then also you mentioned self-doubt.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I feel like that's such a huge issue in so many of our lives. I know I've struggled with that at times of just wondering if I'm good enough for this, or do I have what it takes, or, oh, well, God's never going to use me that way.
Right.
I've always fit into this role, that sort of
Hey,
thing.
I've done that every week almost sometimes. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. And so, man, sometimes we're our greatest enemies.
Yeah.
We just
And
hold ourselves back.
And if he puts it on your heart, it's him, and he will equip it, and he will show up for us. And he's done it over and over. And so we just have to say, shut up, devil. I'm going for it. I'm listening to the Lord, not the enemy anymore.
Yeah.
And sometimes shut up, Andy. Just do it. Listen. Stop talking yourself out of it.
Yeah,
That's me too, right?
Yeah, too. Yeah, for sure. Well, I know that this message, it definitely hit a lot of different people. I talked to people in the lobby where it hit them. Had a new person who was like, I needed this. Like, I came in, this is my first day, and I came in knowing I needed some help, and this is exactly what I needed. And so perhaps there's many of you out there like that. We'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts. Please feel free to post them on whatever platform you're watching this on. But also, if you have any questions or anything that you just aren't quite sure about, we would love to be able to help with that. We are a church that does not shy away from your questions. We are more than willing to answer them. We talk about them quite often here, but we also have a midweek Q&A that we do every single Wednesday. And so please feel free to go to our website at my3c.org and submit a question, where you'll see just an anonymous question thing, so no one's going to even know who you are if you do it. With that said, I always say this. If you want someone to follow up, don't click the anonymous one. Make sure you go to our Connect card where we can get your contact information and follow up with you. Because sometimes people will put prayer requests or like, hey, I need help with this. And we're like, we don't know who you are, because they truly are anonymous. So if you want us to follow up, go to the Connect card. If you just want to ask a question, feel free to hit that Ask a Question tab that you'll find on our website. But until then, we are so glad that you all tuned in. We're glad that you were with us today, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you all again next week. We'll see y'all later.